Welcome to the Part 254, where we uncover, discover, and rediscover our great country called Kenya. It is 2023. The country is undergoing another economic downturn, and guys are getting laid off. Properties are getting seized by the government. Oh, sorry, not by the government, the banks. I see there's a difference. Anyway, but the banks, creditors, auctions, and there's a huge number of students, Form 4 leavers mostly, leaving the country, going to other countries for greener pastures. I would like to say Western countries, but it's every part of the country, every part of the world basically. Some are going to Europe, some are going to Americas, some are seeking to go all the way to Australia, and most, they are learned, mostly the ones who have been done their degrees. Most who want easy jobs and fast jobs, most are going to the Middle East. Despite numerous cases of human, well, I'm just say torture. Anyway, this is the Part 254. We discover and rediscover our country, and we're going to delve into this topic today. This phenomenon has just happened the other day. This is not the first time this has happened, but it has happened a couple of times in the past. And when we want to delve into this matter in our country, we have to give it some perspective so that we can actually understand what is going on, because today there are two generations specifically who I'm really worried about. There's the millennials who are there, of which I'm one of them, and there's this younger generation of Gen Zs who are suffering these consequences, suffering these situations, but they do not know why the situations are the way they are. So I'd like to delve into that and explain it. This is the first time where there have been something akin to what is happening today. In the late 90s, it was called the brain drain. What happened in the 90s is that our great president, our former president, Daniel Arap Moi, led this country since 1978. When he led this country since 1978, he had to consolidate his power. One way of consolidating power is controlling all the avenues of money generating. So, money was spent, the government went and committed money and funds to different projects without fiscal discipline. This lack of fiscal discipline really affected our country and the growth. There was no development that would have gone in tandem with the population growth. So the demand for wealth, for demand for value was surpassed every other aspect of our society. So this really hit home. Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War ended. So the United States, which is now the superpower, could not support him anymore. So he had to be forced to abide with the rules of IMF, which dictated that open up the country for imports, dictated that you have to pay this much, so you have to tax people more. So things skyrocketed, and you can ask your parents. Their parents could have that memory, will have that memory. So there was a time when many people in Kenya, every person who was graduating was advised or wanted to go abroad, and many people went. That's why there's so many Americans who are Kenyan, there's so many British people who are actually from Kenya, and they left. If you follow very well, they left from that period. Guys who were born in that same period are born in those countries, don't understand why they were born in those countries because of that. And right now we are seeing a similar repetition of the same value. It's very sad that this is what is happening yet again, despite economic advices and projections saying that this would happen. Economic projections from as so recent past as 2020 during the coronavirus. This particular situation that we're in is not unique to Kenya. And that is where most of our ministers, as you've heard, our Minister for Industrialization, so colorfully put it that this is not a Kenyan issue alone. This is an issue that has been there for the longest time. This issue has been here and we cannot get rid of it. And why is this issue affecting us? And they're saying it's international. Why aren't other countries crying, as you can see? So Kenya is just a cog. Just a cog in a whole wheel system, a whole gear system of the world economy. This world economy was established by something called by the Bretton Woods Agreement. So, small bit of history here, guys. Europe fought. We call it World War One. The countries in Europe fought. They had a problem. Germany started growing in power, so the Russians feared, the British feared, they held hands and started attacking Germany. First World War. Second World War also popped up. Different factions, different teams came up. The same thing, same ending up. So these were very, very powerful companies, and they had interests in Africa, and that's why Africa was pulled into it. These countries had colonies here, and that's why we were pulled into it. Interestingly, there was a new continent, a new country, a very powerful one, okay, not so powerful at the time, but equal, that had just been. Newest country in the world that had just been formed was America, United States of America. The United States of America was formed around 1770 something. So you see, by the time the early 1900s happening, it's 100 years, but compared to the Europeans, it's relatively new. It had formed some industries and all that. They didn't really quite understand why the Europeans are fighting, and they didn't take sides. The president then even chose to absolve himself and put himself away from that war in Europe. It was called a seclusionist treaty that he signed with everyone in Europe, so that no one can attack America, and America will not attack any other country in Europe unless otherwise. So what happened is Europe was spending a lot of military equipment and bombs and planes and everything. So now, who was to provide for them? Because the Germans would blow up the companies that were manufacturing this, and the Allies would bomb the countries or the companies that were supporting Germany. So it was left for America, the United States of America, to be a very, very convenient supplier for this war. So it started supplying weapons, guns, ammunition, planes, and here we see the rise of Henry Ford and his genius manufacturing industry of cars and planes. And it catapulted America to a very, very high level. Now, on the financial side, because today we're talking about finances, let's not talk about the war. On the financial side, countries then and back then, when you trade between country and country, you don't send them goods in exchange for the goods they give you, because maybe you could do that, but if you have a war, you don't have the goods to give them. So if, for example, if we were trading with Uganda back then, hypothetically, let's say we were free, if we were trading with Uganda, then Uganda would give us bananas, then we would send them waru from Nyandarua. So that is how countries do. That is how countries would do. Now, in case Kenya didn't have warus from Nyandarua because it was off season, because we don't have storage, then what that would mean is that Uganda would give us the bananas, and we would have to give them gold, because since time immemorial, all through the conquests and the empires that have existed, only one thing has been known to be fungible and valuable all through. That was gold. So it is the best currency, and the currency that has been accepted by everyone in the world. So when Europe was fighting and they needed these things from America, they could not give them anything in return. America asked them to give them gold then. So they were sending gold to America, and most of it was paid back with ammunition. Every country in the world has gold reserves. The gold reserves are a way of the country maintaining the value of the coins and the money that it has. This period, whenever a government has gold, whenever a government wants to buy gold from the people go and mine for gold. So they come up with an average amount of value for that gold. So the government takes the gold and gives you a piece of paper and writes there, it's 20 pounds. Down there they say this can be exchanged for gold in this grammage. Exactly. So you go and trade that paper. You give that paper to someone else, that person gives you a cow, and on and on and on. Whoever will hold that piece of paper at the end would come back to the bank and say, I need my gold. And they'll be given gold. In the days towards the First World War, that was what was happening. But now, Europe gave all its gold in its reserves to America. So what that forced them to do is that they could not exchange gold for those pieces of paper that are out there called notes. After the war had ended, America had all the gold that Europe needed. By the time the war ended, America had held to almost all the gold that Europe had. So now that Europe did not have the gold with them, they had to come up with a deal. So American currency at that time was also backed up in gold. They could not make a dollar without having gold to back it up in their reserves. So because now they had a lot of gold reserves, they had made more dollars. So America gave them a good idea and told them, hey, then use the dollar as a reserve in your continent, because this dollar is backed up by gold. So they did. They took dollars, and the dollars became the reserves because they don't have the gold. And because the dollar is exchangeable for gold anytime, no problem, we'll do that. After the Second World War, a little bit later, the gold standard was revoked, because now there were dollars everywhere, and people could come back and claim gold from them. Actually, it isn't just that far. Around the time the Second World War was happening, the American government blocked the exchange from currency from dollar to gold. You couldn't present your dollar and be given gold, because now so many people are using the dollar, so many of them out there, and secretly they were printing a lot. So now no one could actually, start claiming. After the war, the Europeans came together and they realized this and started using the dollar as a backup. The backup became the dollars in their central reserves, central banks, and all that, as they're trying to rebuild their gold reserves. Then comes a president called President Nixon, who served, I think, from 68, a leap year, 68 to 70 something, right? Somewhere like that. In about 71, because what was happening then is that so many people were demanding the gold or the dollar and putting them in the central banks. And not so many people, so many nations. So these nations were putting a strain on the American economy, because now when they're taking the dollars to put them in the central banks, they're building the economies. They didn't have the economies, the economy of America could not withstand all that demand of the dollars to go and be placed in the central banks across Europe. So what did he do? Because there was a rush to that, and it was leading to other financial issues. What he did, he decided that we're not going to demand After the war ended and European countries came together, formed the EU, made sure that there's a peace in their continent, there's a sort of semblance and one voice to their continent, they decided, let's go now and start taking gold from America. After all, we've been taking these dollars and putting in our banks. We need not change them back to gold, because that is what is needed. So there was a mad rush for gold, and America had to give them gold. In exchange for the dollars that they had, and give them. So there's an economic issue there. Then came President Nixon, who was president since 1968 to 70 something when he left. So around 1971, there was a problem in America. There was a problem because they didn't have enough gold to back up the dollars that were out there, and most of these countries were taking all those dollars and demanding gold back. So what did they do? They decided, no. we have to send a policy out that right now, from now henceforth, we cannot exchange gold for dollars. And the central bank can now print dollars as much as is needed from time to time, and the value will be determined by the markets. So that's where the inflation in America started. The inflation in America, which had been started by the demand for gold already, because now if you cannot change $1 for 1 gram of gold, then maybe $2 will be enough for 1 gram of gold, or $10 will be enough for 1 gram of gold. It does not make sense. So the Europeans realized that these people are cheating them. So they made a deal, got their gold, went back, and Americans proceeded. A little bit later on, after that, every oil that was being mined from the Middle East was valued in gold. So everyone was buying it in gold. Dollars. Everyone was buying it in dollars. This buying in dollars made sure that there was a consistent demand for dollars from then to date. Even Kenya is looking for dollars specifically to buy oil. That makes it so that we are always demanding dollars. So there's always a value for dollars somewhere in the world. And it's pegged by the oil that is coming from Arab countries. Right now, 2023, this sharp increase in inflation that is being realized across the whole world, by the way, not just in Kenya, is because of something very recent, and people didn't really keep that in mind or listen to it well or understand what was happening. When President Donald Trump became president in America, and he was president since 2018 to 2022, he was president since 2016 to 2020. During the Corona period, when the president Donald Trump was president, he printed 80% of all the dollars that have ever existed in America. So let me break it down to you guys. If $1 equals 1 gram, and then this $1, 4 others are created, will the $1 still be equal to 1 gram of gold? Nope. If $1 equals 1 gram of gold, then that means if at some point I have the ability to replicate this $1 and make 4 more, that means I'll have $5. This $5 will be equal to this 1 gram of gold. So that means $1 will now have a new value of 0.2 grams of gold, or 20 milligrams. That is what is happening in the world. This has happened since the 60s. It happened in Nixon's time. They came up during George Bush's time. They sent money minters. Actually, most of the money that was printed in Afghanistan was printed in Afghanistan. The dollars that were spent there were printed there. The American government saw it easier. Instead of transporting this cash from America all the way to Afghanistan and Iraq, just sent the printer there. They sent the printer there, they sent everything there, the papers, the money was printed and was spent and used there. So it liquidated the money a bit. And you can realize that you can see that happening in the world as a repercussion of that. You can see every time that happens, there's something else that happens. There's a depression that spreads across the world, because inflation, when it comes to the dollar, does not affect America immediately. It takes time, and unfortunately the rest of the world is so duped and dumb to realize that this inflation is not a result of their unproduction or unproductivity. It is as a result of the Americans creating more dollars and they backing all their currency with that dollar. We are not realizing, we do not know these things, we're not applying them. If we knew, we're not applying them in our current systems. So in the 60s that happened, and we can realize, we can see so many downturns and economic problems happening. When the war in Iraq happened, that inflation went round and came back and hit. And there's an economic downturn or depression in around 28, 27, 28, 29, 2010. And now, that inflation has gone round the world again, that went round the world again and came back around 2016, 2017, 2018. Then Donald Trump decided, to hell, I will create this and proceed. And when America creates these dollars, it writes on a piece of paper that we owe this debt. Right now it is about 40 trillion or something. I don't know. There's a big clock somewhere that always counts how much debt America owes. But who does it owe to? In actual sense, it does not owe to anyone. So let me come back home. That is too complicated. Let me come back home. The best way to understand this in Kenya is, I usually eat a whole tilapia with ugali. It depends where I eat them from, but it's about 400 shillings, 500 shillings. And if it's a big restaurant, it's about 800 shillings to 1200 shillings, right? So I eat that. That is the budget. Let's say 500 shillings and 1000 shillings. Let's go to the small restaurant, 500 shillings. Today, I'd be told that that whole meal that I'm used to paying 500 shillings for, I'll have to pay 800 shillings for. What has changed there? Is it that the tilapia has become bigger, or the ugali has become bigger, or it has more nutrition value in it? Or what is happening? What has changed? Is it the value of the fish or the value of the shilling? It's the value of the shilling that has changed. And it has changed mostly, predominantly, because the dollar, the value of the dollar has shrunk. And if we are making this shilling backed up by the dollar, then that means if we're dependent on that dollar, we are depreciating. The smartest way, proven across the world, proven ever since the Roman Empire's days. The best way of avoiding this is to ensure that you have something else of value that you can always peg this shilling to. Produce something. Farm or produce something. And you can always see this kind of mentality is not new. It's the basic economics 101 in a class. And I'm not the first to know this. This is not rocket science. The countries that know themselves and know who they are and who know what they are and where they're from. And listen to advice from experts. Not like our experts here, but anyway. Listen to advice from experts. They ensure that their currency is hedged, at least against something, and they make sure that the inflation that is in America has limited effects in their own economy. They protect their own economy because it's their own. They will never have another economy. One of these countries is China. Another country is Japan. China has always been accused of devaluing their yen, their Chinese yuan. It has always been accused of devaluing it. But the Chinese are like, first of all, we have to export. We need to export these things, a lot of them. We can't start valuing this yuan very highly because now you guys out there will be unable to buy. So we're going to protect our economy that way. Devalue it against your currencies that your guys can buy. Once they buy, you will use them. And I will ensure that you guys, when you bring your cash into our country, now you won't have more of the yuan. We will control how you put it in our country. As a result, China has become a very, very big economic powerhouse. A big producer of everything in the world. If China closed down, and you saw it during the coronavirus. We are going to suffer. Everything from cups to sieves to clothes, everything comes from there. Electronics, everything. Japanese yen. The Japanese yen has known these things also. The Japanese have realized that the economy of the world as it is, it's messed up. It's fabricated to favor the Americans. And the Americans are messing up. They're not doing their due diligence. They're not following natural justice. So they put a lot of value in their country's production, manufacturing, economy, the industries. So they prop up the industries. The wooden industry, they prop up. Their clay work industry, they prop up. The car manufacturing industry, they prop up. They invest a lot in there. They do everything to ensure that the industries are popping up, and they value their Japanese yen with the things they produce, so that it cannot be reliant majorly on the US dollar. Though most people are translating or buying Japanese yen with the US dollar, they do not depend on it 100%. What is happening in Kenya is that we do not have something that we can sell out there in the world that will prop up the Kenyan shilling, that will say this 1 kilogram of coffee or this 1 kilogram of tea actually costs 100 shillings or 200 shillings or 300 or 1,000 Kenyan shillings. Whichever way you want to convert that out there into dollars, this is a value here at home. So we are going to give farmers this much. The transporter guy will get this much. The guy who is going to store this much. The guy who is going to peel it and add value to it. The guy who is going to roast it will get this much. We are going to control it if we produce something, but we are not producing something. So our Kenya shilling is basically backed up by the dollar. Exactly by the dollar. So that's how the Americans are stealing from us, and that's how they are ending up being very powerful and very, very rich. We're going to enjoy lives. They're going to perform. They're going to buy the best things in the world. Everyone is going to climb up to them to sell to them, because everyone else out here wants the dollar, and countries like Kenya are going to suffer. The people here are going to suffer. We are going to have a very, very huge brain drain towards the West. And those same people who are going there are going to study, pass, and all the innovation they're going to create, all the taxes that are going to be, taxed from them, will go to making and propping up those countries. Here at home, we have been told to dig on oil wells. That is what we've been told. Not forgetting that there is tallow oil, a whole scandal that happened in northern part of Kenya. Anyway, the Kenyan shilling is dropping, and you need to know what is happening. So next that you're complaining about the Kenyan shilling, next that you're complaining about the cost of life, next that you're complaining about hikes in prices, just remember, what item is this that the price has gone up? What item are you buying? Are you buying a locally made item, or are you ordering an item online that has come from another country? Let's ask ourselves these questions. It would be easier or better if you have some sukuma wiki in your garden and you need a flour, like a 2 kg packet of flour, or 2 kg, the flour that has been milled locally by portion mills, then you exchange. Just agree how much sukuma for flour, and you do the barter trade, and we go back to the ancient days. Anyway, this is the part 254, where we uncover, discover, and rediscover our great country. Keep this in mind next time we're talking about finances.